Hi everyone, happy Friday, good morning and welcome to this week's episode of Question Pro's Fireside Chats. It's my huge pleasure to be joined by Charli Kumar, who I worked for at Sky for 7 odd years. Charli has held leadership roles at Sky in the UK, Spain and Germany, also worked at ITV as well as in consulting, and last year was voted a top 50 game changer in TV and is generally just an awesome human being. So welcome, Charli. Pleasure to have you on this little chat.
Oh, it's a joy to be here. Thank you.
Cool. So you'll be able to tune in each month for around 30 minutes, usually at 11 a.m. London time, depending on which guests, topics and regions we're focusing upon. We're live on my LinkedIn as well as Question Pro's YouTube and X feeds. So please do post your comments and questions as we want to make these a part of the discussion, make it as interactive as possible. And what are the Fireside Chats with Question Pro all about? Well, they're informal discussions with our clients, partners, and subject matter experts to share ideas, thoughts, experiences, challenges, and best practices in CX, market research, data, and insights. Question Pro is an experience transformation solution provider across all of those disciplines, and in the CX space has a unique integrated product suite covering all of your CX needs, from journey mapping, feedback collection, analytics, and action taking. You can learn more at questionpro.com or reach out to me direct at nick.mcfarlane@questionpro.com. So let's jump into it. Today's chat is going to be all about what leaders look for in a CX program. But Charli, I obviously know quite a bit of this, having worked for you for a long time. But can you just tell us a little bit of your career story and where your passion for getting things right for customers comes from?
Yeah, well, first off, thank you. And thank you for the very kind introduction. It's great to be here. So yeah, you're right. I've had quite a wide range of roles actually in mine, probably around 20 years in the media industry. And I won't take you through all of those, but when I step back, it's all about the moments in a business where you need to launch something, transform something, fix something, those kind of dynamic moments in a business. So that has seen me launch and lead our streaming business in Spain, transform our streaming business in Germany, commercially lead kind of full sales, service, data, billing transformations with agile ways of working and so on. So quite a wide range of different pieces. And my personal interest at the moment is around sort of sustainability and how do you step into transforming through more sustainable actions and so on as well. So that's what's joined together as the kind of golden thread through everything that I've done. And it's that transformation that connects me with customers, right? Because you can't make that level of change without impacting customers. Sometimes that's directly, if you launch new products, obviously new customers, new products. If you're making platforms better, then you have an improvement to the experience. So there's a lot of direct impact you can have. You can also have indirect impact if you're not careful. If you get everybody so concerned about a big transformation that they just look internally, then they're not thinking about customers the way they should be. So either way, you've got customer impact that you're playing with. And then I think the second bit is when you're running a transformation, having an end-to-end perspective is critical. Like you've got to get all the right pieces together to make the whole thing work. And that's where a customer lens can actually be useful. So if you ask someone, have you built your bit? Is your bit ready? They will be able to say yes. If you ask them, are we customer ready for this thing? They'll go, ooh, because it's a different question. It's getting to think about, well, my bit might be ready, but is my next door neighbor's bit ready? And is the guy down the office ready? Is this all going to hang together? So,
and how is it going to come across? And it's a fascinating question, isn't it? When you think, we get so stuck in as a business as to what's my bit, or how have I done around what people want me to do, rather than how's this going to come across? Yeah, exactly. It's really fascinating.
So there's a bit of customer impact naturally with transformation, and there's a bit of sometimes you actively using the customer. I know it sounds awful, but it's actively using that customer lens because it will help make the transformation better.
Yeah, cool. And you were back to that sort of, what do leaders want from CX? And I think, your big picture view is probably important there. And you and my boss, when I did what, I think was probably some of my best customer experience work when we launched and ran Sky's OTT proposition in Spain. And you were obviously instrumental in helping me shape that program. What do you think makes a customer experience team, department, program successful?
Yeah, so I really enjoyed that work, by the way, Nick.
So the
two main things I would call out is be really clear on your purpose. What are you actually trying to drive? What is the impact you're trying to create? And the second, make sure that action follows on from the insight. So, and why do I say those two? I say those two because interesting is the enemy of customer experience programs. Interesting is that squidgy gray layer in the middle where everybody goes, oh, but it's not quite enough to be an exciting opportunity I want to act on. And it's not scary enough that it's a problem I need to fix. And so you sit in this gray squidgy area in the middle, which is, that's interesting. So to me, that's the enemy when you come into a CX program. So that's why I call on those two pieces. Be really clear on your purpose. Like if you want to bring in a customer journey mapping tool, super cool. But the actual purpose of that is not to map journeys. The purpose of that is to map a journey, see which bits work really well and could do better, see which bits don't work so well, make those changes, have more customers buying or staying and create business impact. That is your purpose. Not, I want to bring it into map journeys, right? Because that's where your impact comes from. And then action's really obvious, right? If I'm in interesting insight space, then I'm not adding business value. I have to get those ideas into the real world and into action to make a difference. And like even simply when we first started, Nick, we talked about just get 5 actions done this quarter. I actually didn't care that much what those actions were. It was about trying to create a culture where we don't just look at the insight and say it's interesting. We take it and we do something with it, even at a small level. Just get that momentum and get that ball rolling.
Yeah. And we sort of built out a little bit of a model, didn't we, around listen, interpret, act, monitor. And I think it was that impetus of we've got to have some actions here that kind of got us into that space, because we got listening nailed and it was interesting.
Yeah. And you can get stuck there. It's really dangerous.
And I remember coming and talking about stuff that I thought really was interesting, but it was like, yeah, so what? Yeah. What are you going to do with that? I don't care what your numbers are saying about CSAT or NPS or whatever. Let's monitor a target of actions we're going to take. And I think that to me shifted the whole dynamic of what we were doing there, and actually it got the team thinking about what is it that we're doing. So I think back to your purpose and back to your don't just be interesting analogy. It's so true, and it really galvanized us, and it really helped make that program a success. So yeah, good one for people to think about. And I think stepping on from that, I obviously hope that that then became something that as the leadership team, you guys were interested in what we were saying and what we were doing. What do you think leaders really want to see from a CX team if they've gone down that road, they get customers important, we're going to do CX, but what do they really want when they're stepping into that world, do you think?
So the first thing I say when they're stepping into that world is make sure that when you say customer experience, they don't hear customer service, right? Because they're not the same thing. Customer service is a massive part of customer experience, and it's often one of the main times where you get to interact with customers. But everything is customer experience. It's the marketing you put out, it's the sales journey you have, it's the order confirmation, it's the customer service, it's the service that you give. So it's far broader. And there's a risk when you walk into an exec that when you say I want to do customer experience, they go talk to the customer ops guy or girl, right? Because it's all customer service, and it's not. So don't fall into that trap, because that's hard to then get out of afterwards. But more broadly, I think it's focusing in on what is the change you're trying to create. Saying that a customer wants something isn't enough, right? It's got to be customers want this thing more than anything else. And if they had this thing, then they would buy more, stay more, whatever it is. You got to get beyond the sort of voice of the customer saying this is what the customer wants and getting to building a case for the customer. I think the case for the customer is really powerful, because then you're starting to tie together a customer insight with a commercial metric, with an idea of how you might land it. That's a case. And in a world where like every organization has constraints, it has constraints on money, yes, but also time, resource, bandwidth. You're going to be fighting for your customer idea within that list of all the other things that people are worried about. Right. So how you do that is not just, oh, a customer would like this, please. It's the customer would like this. And here are all the different reasons of why that hangs together as a business concept that we should push forward. And that's where I think CX teams need to sort of push into, is that what's the case for the customer that we've just built?
Yeah, that's interesting. And there's a couple of things in that. I think that the customer experience, not customer service, is fascinating. And I have a little bit of history in both, but I'm thinking of a time when I was at Kazoo, actually after Sky, and it's like, but our customer service is good.
Yeah.
And it's thinking about how do you frame that conversation with what the top guy might be seeing is everything's green here. I know that we're answering our calls. I know that we're solving problems. I've got nothing really burning. And you're telling me we need to come here and do more stuff and fix more stuff and spend more money to find out more stuff. I think that is a battle, and definitely that being able to present things as a case, all of the journey mapping, listening, all of that play a part. But until you can define that action, understand what that action is going to do for the organization at a level that matters, not just at a level that is nice to have, you're probably not going to get too far with it.
Yeah, exactly. It's people have an awful lot of things to worry about. Why is your thing one of the things that should be on their list? Right? And that it's not because anybody is trying to be anti-customer. It's just that every single day they're going to be faced with 100 different things they could choose to do. So you're essentially pitching why this particular customer idea or program or whatever needs to be on that list, and kind of thinking through from the other person's perspective. It's like, well, I've got to launch a brand new campaign here and a product over here and something else. Why do I need to do this if my customer service is okay? Like that's where you just got to get into their mindset and get into that priority list, so that otherwise you'll feel like you're running into a brick wall every time, because they'll go, oh yeah, that's very nice, very interesting, as we said before. It's very interesting, but customer service is green and I've got this launch to worry about. So it's how you get earn the space in their minds, actually.
Yeah, and I guess, some of that plays into this sort of thing that I've always said about customer experience, that, it's a bunch of people trying to make another bunch of people's lives easier, which sort of brings a human element into it for me, but maybe also cuts through that sort of, I'm trying to do something, I'm doing it to help you, or I'm seeing there's a problem here that's going to help the organization, or this is maybe going to help our customers, or whatever. I think that human element has always been important for me, and I wondered how sort of you think about that, and if you agree with me on that sort of thing.
No, I totally do. Fun, and that's true. Any stuff I've done in transformation, not even just sort of CX, pure CX focus, it all comes down to people. Right? Whatever nice strategy or plan or whatever you have on a page means nothing if the people don't believe in it and want to do it and put their shoulders behind it. So, I think that's the first part, is always people. And then the second is like customer experience is by nature end to end. So, you've heard me say this so many times, the customer does not care. This is how we have decided to chop up our organization. They do not care that marketing stopped here and sales started here and customer started here and service started there. They don't care. They shouldn't care. They shouldn't need to care, right? So then it does become about collaboration and connection, because organizations are cut up into pieces. They have to be, otherwise it's not manageable. So how do you inspire a mindset where that collaboration and connection is natural? And one idea that we'd used quite a lot in the last couple of years on really big sales and service platform transformation is, how do you encourage people to be T-shaped? So by that, I mean, like the main leg of a capital T is your subject matter expertise, the stuff that you can go deep in, the stuff that no one else can do. And I've worked with teams with incredible subject matter expertise. And then you're encouraging the idea of the top of the T, the reaching your arms out to say what's on one side and what's on the other side. And that can make people uncomfortable because, well, but that bit's not my job, or that's not where my expertise is. It's like, yeah, but if you're doing your piece and the next person's doing the next piece, but those links in the chain aren't linked together, then it's all for nothing. So it's trying to get people comfortable and encouraging reaching out to touch the other sides, making sure that what your piece of work fits with the next guy. And then when you ask the question of, are we customer ready with this? It's far easier for people to answer because they've already done the linking. They've already done connecting with the other sides. So that's probably the biggest piece. And it depends on your culture as well, right? And the scale of organization. Some organizations, particularly more startup, if I think of where we were in Spain, that idea of being broad as well as deep was really natural because you have a small team covering an awful lot. You get a larger scale organization where people are put in sort of narrower definitions of roles, or at worst into kind of silos, and you have to push quite a lot harder to break down that culture and encourage that behavior, because people will react as, I'm not just going to annoy someone if I go and suggest this. It's like, no, we really want you to suggest it. We really want you to connect. So that really breaking down internal barriers is really important.
Yeah, and that's, I think, something I've always found is that a customer experience and being in a customer experience team in an organization sort of lends itself to you building that broad as possible horizontal view of the business. And you come across a lot of people who just have that straight down view. And I think, if you think of a point like that, what do you need, and what sort of tools, other than wanting to build great relationships, understanding people's areas of interest, problems they might be facing as well as you can, going back to that, just trying to make people's lives easier. But, how do you do that, and how do you sort of foster that amongst everything, really plays into encouraging everyone else to be T-shaped, as you say. So I really like that. You've got a question popped up from Chris. Hey, Chris, thanks. What is the starting point when you are trying to overturn a siloed culture of responsibilities being very separate? I think a little bit what I was just saying there, I always find that, naturally in a CX role, you're going to have to get to know lots of people in the organization. So just sort of, building a relationship, understanding other people's areas, responsibilities, problems, concerns, things that, they need to get done, and sort of being someone for them to talk to is a great starting point. I don't know, Charlie, if you've got any thoughts on that as well.
So thanks for the question, Chris. No, I would definitely echo that in terms of relationship and people, because there's a huge part of it that's that. The other piece I would add is having everybody aiming for the same thing, because that's where I use some of the customer piece when I spoke earlier. So if it's about, we need to get a product launch done, yeah, that's fine, I'm doing my bit. Change the goal to be, we need to have a brilliant sort of coherent launch that makes sense to customers. Because suddenly that's put the bar a little bit higher, that, yeah, you're ready, but is it coherent? Is it going to be clear to customers? Is it going to be simple? Like making that goal something that everybody can stand behind and holding on to that. I think is probably the first thing I would do. And then you build behind with relationships to say, why doesn't that fit with you? Like what are you struggling with around this overall goal? And how can I help break that down so that we do all end up sort of pushing in that same direction? Because so much of this comes down to people caring about the same thing.
And then, I think just sort of thinking of my world at the minute, tools that can be helpful with that. So actually having a journey mapped well, so you understand, actually what the customer perspective is, which areas of the business might actually have an influence in that, or having listening that is targeted to actually things that people care about, not just asking, are you satisfied with something, and making sure that you're asking the right question at the right time, or pulling the right insight from unstructured data at the right time. So I think all of the CX tools we have are really just aids to help you have these better conversations and get people thinking more T-shaped in a way. Would you agree with that? Sort of.
Yeah, I would. And I think the other part with a customer perspective is quite often these silos get created and then people go, it's someone else's fault, right? Oh, it's these guys. And it becomes quite a them and us kind of construct. When you bring in a customer perspective, like no one can kind of shy away from that. It's like, however this is happening across our organization, this is what our customers are feeling. So how do we as a group solve that? Or how do we as a group take this forward as an opportunity, whichever kind of side it is? So again, there's a neutrality in a customer perspective that can be really valuable. And you can gain that through your customer journey maps or through your customer listening and so on, the various different tools that bring it in. But a way to use it is that neutral perspective that no one can say it was someone else's fault. It just is. It just is, and it is true. So how do we all face into that?
It's a Jeff Bezos empty chair in the meeting room concept of, let's make sure we're thinking about the customer there, I guess. And then, so spoken about silos and, cutting across them. But what about sort of more organizationally and structurally? And you've done some huge transformation. How do you actually sort of think about setting up teams for success in that? Is it sort of getting the right people in the right org structure, or is it just making them feel that they have this responsibility to be more T-shaped? How do you think about getting it set up for success?
Yeah, that's a really good and broad question, because some of it comes down to your organization as well. There are loads of different ways you can set it up, and choosing the right way that's going to fit with your people is an important one. But to step through a couple of examples that pop into my head. So you can do it in a more formal organizational way. So if you imagine your kind of classic boxes on charts where everybody links together, if you've got teams that are split across 3 different places, put them underneath one leader, maybe that solves some of your problem. That's quite a traditional sort of boxes on a page kind of approach. You can step into different ways of working if you step into something more like agile, whether that's full on sort of safe agile, or it's just use of squads. The idea there is you're creating teams that can operate across those traditional functions. So the first idea is get everybody into the same traditional function. The second idea is using something like agile that says you're bringing together teams that operate across those different functions. You can also set it up just as programs, right? Particularly if they're not going to be things that live for a really long time. If it's something around a more sort of, for the next year, we want to be focusing on this piece, then that's the program setup. So clear articulation of different leads from different areas, what the accountabilities are for each of those, and what the overall purpose and the program is, so everybody gets behind it. That's a sort of a more interim way of doing it. And as you say, it might be as simple as the way you set up some of your regular meetings and some of your regular reporting to get the right group of people talking to each other, going for a beer or a drink with each other. I mean, so some of it really started that, and you know that better than most, right? Like the number of times I've heard people say, well, I wouldn't usually do this, but it's Nick, so I will, right? There's so much value in that personal relationship as well. So you go all the way from boxes on a page from an HR org kind of perspective through to how am I connecting these people, and how am I celebrating when people show the behaviors that I really want them to? Because that's really powerful. That then blossoms and becomes, oh, well, if that was celebrated, the next thing will be celebrated. The risk, if you've got a really siloed organization, is you spend all the time on the people who want to be in their silos and you focus in on the negative side. Actually, it's really powerful to focus in on the positive side. Who are the role model people? Who are your sort of early adopters of this? And then who's the next tranche and the next tranche, and focus on that positive side, rather than sometimes getting stuck with the people that are going to be the hardest to move into the new mindset.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. We jumped around, quite a lot of things there, and I think bringing it back to that sort of, what do leaders want from a customer experience team? I'm kind of hearing, not just be interesting. Know what your purpose
Interesting is the enemy. Like,
interesting really, is the enemy. I love that. Fortunately, I'm not very interesting, so that's a barrier that I don't face. No, I take that back. But know what your purpose is and be able to take actions that get you towards that purpose, whilst bringing people along with you, armed with that sort of view of, this is what it means to our customers, is probably a pretty good starting place if you can get those things right. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other piece to kind of frame it is that idea of a case for a customer, because that's when you start to bring together so many different elements of, yes, it is about the voice of the customer and it is about the customer insight, but it's also about, how does this impact commercially? How does this impact operationally? Am I coming up with an idea that is going to easily add value, or is it something we're going to really need to fight for and deprioritize other stuff for? The more you can think about that rounded picture, the more likely you are to be able to land that change, and also get people behind that change in order to land it. So I think that interesting, definitely the enemy, just period. Punkt, we would say in Germany, and then building the case for your customer. I think those are probably the two strongest themes.
Cool. I think that's a really good place to leave it. And for those of us, thinking about this voice of the customer stuff, let's start thinking more about that case for the customer, because I think that makes so much sense. Charli, thank you so much. It's been a wonderful conversation, as always. I always enjoy it.
It's always nice to chat with you, Nick. And this stuff is, it's really interesting. It's really interesting stuff. And it's so universally applicable. It doesn't matter what kind of business you're in, whether it's B2C or B2B, it just doesn't matter. A lot of these things apply in so many different contexts. So it's fun stuff to talk about too.
Great stuff. So thank you everyone for tuning in. We've come to the end of the session. So please do look out for our next customer experience fireside chat, which will be towards the end of April. Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.